There are two technologies, virtualization and containerization. They both of they are the buzzword nowadays. So this video is about to understand what is virtualization, what is containerization, and then we will look at the comparison between virtualization and containerization. We will try to understand the technology, we will try to understand the difference between both the technologies and which one we should be using where, and their advantages and disadvantages. Hi, namaskar. Good morning, evening, depend upon which part of the world you are while watching this video. This is Krishan from cloudkrishan.com. I did masters in computer science and carrying 20 plus years no, of experience in IT industry. Hope you and your family are doing great while you are watching this video. Let's get started. So, what is virtualization? So, virtualization is the technology that lets you create useful IT services using resources that are traditionally bound to hardware. Please understand, traditionally bound to hardware. It allows you to use a physical machine or cluster of machine full capacity by distributing its capabilities among many users or environment. Now, the second technology, containerization. What is containerization? So, containerization is a type of virtualization in which all components of the application are bundled into a single container image and can run in isolation user space. So isolation is one of the feature in virtualization containerization, but there is some difference how both of they isolate the environment, right? Containers are lightweight, they are portable. It means they can be moved from here to there, and high conductive to automation. Okay, so these are the virtualization containerization. Let's understand both of these through through a diagram. So let me open Doin, and I will draw it to understand what exactly it is. So virtualization, okay. So let's understand this. At the background there is an infrastructure. So whenever we say infrastructure, it means a hardware. Hardware behind both of them. So this is we can call as infrastructure or hardware, right? So that's the infrastructure. Over the infrastructure, there is a what you do when you create a machine. You create a host OS, right? You install operating system, and in terms of in virtualization, we call it host OS. Host OS. Why we call it host? Because the other virtual machine or the VMs uh, will be host over this operating system. That's how we call it. Uh, you know, uh, Host operating system. Okay. So infrastructure hardware. Let me give some color. Some style to this. So let's say this is the hardware, and then maybe this is the software. Sorry, the operating system. And now operating system we install a uh, one of the software which we call it hypervisor. Now hypervisor can be different. There are different hypervisors available, like from VMware, Oracle VirtualBox. So these are the hypervisor, right? So let's write me hypervisor. Okay. Now it's infrastructure, hardware, and then host OS, and then over the host OS we install hypervisor. So hypervisor is the software which can be a VirtualBox from Oracle. It can be VMware, or it can be others, right? There are many hypervisor softwares available. Now what hypervisor does basically, it create a separate machine which is isolated completely, which we call VM, virtual machine. Let me call it virtual machine. So okay, maybe let me use this let me use this. So these are the virtual machine. Now what this all so you can create multiple virtual machine, right? So let me create a multiple copy of these virtual machines. So there can be multiple virtual machines, you know And what these virtual machines are having, these virtual machines, they are having maybe, so they have their own operating system, right? And this operation system is called, guest operating system. Actually, we said host OS here, and this is actually, the guest OS. We can call it, they are called guest OS. Let me put it here somewhere just to create some space. It's a guest OS. This virtual machine can have guest OS, and then guest OS. They have their, application app, it bundled and all the related library. Okay, okay, over it. So each of these virtual machine, let me shorten this, and then I will associate all of them. I think let me reduce some size of it. Maybe let me put it somewhere it. Okay. So, so every virtual machine have their own, every virtual machine have their host OS. This is one virtual machine has their own host OS. The second virtual machine has its, host OS and libraries and app. And then third virtual machine can have their own, let me give some background to this, maybe this one, right? So that they become readable. Okay. So all of this is called, virtualization. So what we did basically, we have infrastructure, hardware, server, whatever you call it. So let's say you have one server, you install host OS, I mean the operating system, which we call host operating system, and then over the host operating system, we install a software called Hypervisor, which manage and allow us to create, different virtual machine. So now over using this hypervisor, we have created three virtual machine in this example. There can be any number. There's no limitation as such, and each of the virtual machine is isolated to each other. They can run their own operating system. Operating system may be different, right? Let's say the host OS is Windows, your virtual machine may be the Linux virtual machine, or your host OS may be the Linux, but your guest OS can be Windows. So there's no limitation like that. Now they have the host guest OS, they have their application, and they have the libraries. All these three machines are the virtual machines. You can consider like a separate server. So you are having one server, but using the virtualization technologies and hypervisor tool of it, we can create the multiple machines and computer. Now let's understand in the same way. Let's understand the containerization. Okay, so let me create a copy of it. That will save us. Sorry. I think I need to copy it and let me move it here. Okay. So in containerization also, so this is let me give a name. It's virtualization. Okay. Mhm. So this is virtualization. Virtualization. Maybe bold, and then I may give some style to it. Some something like that. Okay. So this is a virtualization example. And same way we will have a containerization. So this example will be containerization. Okay, containerization, I will give some different color to it, maybe. So in containerization also we have infrastructure of hardware, same as uh, in virtualization. Then we install, there is a host operating system. It can be again any operating system. It can be Windows, it can be Linux, any of them. And then instead of having a hypervisor to virtualization, there's a different software, we call it container engine, right? Container. So this is this is the container engine. Okay. So we don't, in comparison to the hypervisor, here what we have this container engine. Let me delete this extra text. Okay, so we have the container engine. Now over the container engine, we create different containers. Okay, so let me remove this and let me put a container image, right? Uh, so these are the VMs, and then we will have the containers. Okay, so let's say maybe I will use this. So it's maybe the container one. Then okay, so I have the three containers. Now, what is the difference between these virtual machines which we create while virtualization and container? Containers does not have operating system. They use host operating system, right? So that's how when we learn the definition we saw. If we look at our presentation, we see they are lightweight, right? At the end, if you see containers are lightweight, they are portable and highly conductive automation. Why it is so? Because they don't have their operating system. What they have? They have apps, they have libraries. Uh, uh, that's how they are lightweight. And then let me remove guest OS from here. Okay, so this is how they are. So they have their app. I mean the code. You can call it app or maybe the source code, right? It can be code. Whatever code you have, then you have all the libraries and maybe the framework, right? They may have the framework. So if you are using Node.js, let's say for example, then it will have the Node.js, part of that container, so that it can execute that code. Okay, so this is guys, this is how you can understand virtualization and containerization. Now, hope this is clear. Let's understand. So we have answered two questions: what is containerization, what is virtualization, and we understood it from the diagram as well, right? What's the difference between both of them? Let's move to the next question. Some comparison between virtualization and containerization. Now, containerization is a type of virtualization. As I said, both technologies are almost similar, but there are some differences which we will talk here. Okay. So lesson the first one is isolation. Both has the isolation, right? Virtualization, as we look, both are isolated, right, to each other. They separated their process, they isolate their process. In virtualization also is a completely isolated, but in both of these isolation is little difference. What is the difference, right? Let me move to presentation. Isolation, right? So virtualization is fully isolated operating system and VM instance, right? As we see, the virtual machines are having operating system. Container isolate the host operating system machines and containers from one another. You know, they don't. So container don't have their operating system, and they use host operating system, right? All of the containers use host operating system because they use the same operating system. That's how there's a risk. And what is the risk? If that host operating system get corrupted and there's some issue or attacker get control of the host operating system, it means you have compromised all of your containers. So that's the minus or negative things about the containers. Now, different operating system, right? So we saw, let's say we can have host operating system as Windows, and then over that Windows we can create different virtual machine, and each virtual machine can have different operating system. So one virtual machine can have Windows operating system, one machine can have Linux operating system, right? So they can have a different operating system. But in containerization, we cannot have that because container use host operating system, right? And one other thing, like because they use the host operating system, but so you cannot, the Windows containers can run on Windows host only. The Windows has host cannot run Linux containers, or Linux host cannot run Windows container, right? So that's the difference in both of them. Now the third is guest support, right? What is that guest support? Virtualization allow range of operating system, right, to be used in the same server of, machine. Now, containerization is related to the host only, right? So the guest support, there's nothing like guest in container. It use whatever host is using, right? The next one is deployment, right? Which is important because virtualization means each virtual machine has its own hypervisor, right? Using the hypervisor, we created the different virtual machine. Now, containerization, they use either Docker or they use Kubernetes, right? To orchestrate all different containers. So there's a difference in deployment as well. Now, there's the persistent virtual storage. The next, what does it mean by the persistent virtual storage? Persistent means, if every virtual machine has its own, we call it its own memory, right? VHD we call it, right? Virtual hard disk. Okay, VHD. Uh, VHD. Okay, VHD. Virtual hard disk. But containers use, the storage per node. So node means whichever machine or server they are hosted, they use that machine, storage. They don't have their own, VSDs. Now, load balancing, right, which is important topic. So virtual load balancing we call it. So virtualization means failover clusters are used to run VMs with load balancing. So let's say you created virtual machine over the two clusters, those, and you host your application on those two VMs. Each of them are on the different clusters. You use load balancing tool, load balancing to divert the traffic, or transferring your traffic based upon the load. So there's a different algorithm, different type of load balancer, depend how it will deviate your traffic. So this is so virtualization means failover clusters are used to run VMs with load balancing support. Containerization use orchestration by Docker or Kubernetes, right? It either need Docker, it need Kubernetes to start and stop container. It maximize resource utilization. So basically, in containerization, we maximize the resource utilization. So that's it for today. I hope I answer all the questions. So let's understand it again. Let's go through quickly. So agenda, what is virtualization? What is containerization? Virtualization vs containerization. Now, what is virtualization? Virtualization is technology that lets you create useful IT resources using the hypervisor, right? And there, as we said, there are different hypervisor from the different companies, like VMware, VirtualBox from Oracle, etc. Now, containerization is type of virtualization again, but there are some differences. And containers are lightweight. Why they are lightweight? Because they don't have its own operating system. They use the host operating system. They are portable and they are high conductive to automation. Now, virtualization vs containerization differences, we see the isolation. So both are isolated, but there is the differences the way they isolate to each other. We look at the different OS VMs. Every VM can have their own operating system, but containers use host operating system. Then we look at the guest support. We look at the deployment, right? The way they can be deployed. We look at the persistent virtual storage. So in case of VM, it has its own VHD, virtual hard disk, but containers does not have anything like that. They use host storage. And then we look at the virtual load balancing. These are the difference, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it helped you to learn and virtualization, containerization in detail. Uh, Please let me know if you have any feedback in the comment section, so that I can do better job next time. If you liked the video, then subscribe my channel and click on bell icon so that you keep receiving updates on new topic. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye bye.